group here today. Oh, recording in progress. If you guys don't mind, especially with a small group here today, and if you don't mind being recorded, we would love to see your faces and hear your voices. We're going to run this more like a little workshop. So if you do feel comfortable with that, please turn on your cameras. Please unmute your mics when we ask you questions. If you'd rather stay camera off and muted and participate via chat, that is also fine. It's just going to be a whole lot of me and Courtney talking, which is fine because we talk pretty, but it would also be great to hear your voices. Hi there, I'm Seth Fleischauer. I am the president of Banyan Global Learning, which is a company that delivers live virtual learning programs over video conferencing. And we do this with clients primarily in Asia, but we also have begun to work with students in North America. We've been around for 15 years. So we've been doing this since before it was cool, or at least before it was shoved down everyone's throats. I don't even know how we ended up presenting here at ELCC. It was like, we've been here for like, this is like our 4th year in a row. And everybody else is like higher ed people, and we are more K-12, but we keep coming back and having a great time every year. So here we are again, and we're happy that you guys are here too. I want to introduce my colleague, Courtney Dayhuff. Ms. Dayhuff.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Courtney. Happy to be here. Like Seth said, I'm just north of Portland, Oregon in Ridgefield, Washington. Been in education for over 15 years and with Banyan for 11, and work with our students in Asia as well as here domestically. Excited to talk about this topic. There's a lot of good conversations to be had, so feel free to interrupt us or add your insight or your experience. We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. This is not designed as a lecture. If we don't get a ton of participation, it'll probably run a little short. So that's a bonus as well. But we would love for you to participate, respond, interrupt, ask questions. We'd love to know what you want to know. Our first question that we're going to ask everybody is essentially, why are you here? So let's start with like grade levels. If you are higher ed or K-12 or something more specific, can you please either unmute and tell us or put it in the chat? Is any brave soul ready to unmute?
Vicky is higher ed. Thank you for participating, Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky. And Vicky, while you're participating, Justin, also higher ed, thank you. Can you just give us your like positions, locations? I mean, I see Vicky's at York College of PA. We're to York. We actually work with someone, Calvin Weary, who's based in York, PA. Don't know if you know him, but he's fantastic. If you could give us like your kind of your comfort level with digital citizenship, maybe why you're here, what your position is. Just give us like a sense of why you're here, what you want to know, so that we can kind of tailor what we're talking about to what you guys want and need.
Hi, Seth. I unmuted since this was a longer question to type.
Thank you.
I am a librarian who teaches a first-year seminar, so digital citizenship is something that links into that.
Excellent. And do you know Calvin Weary, Cal Weary?
I do not believe so.
He works with like local high schools doing a lot of theater-based stuff. He owns like an old theater, like on the main strip of York, PA.
Weary Arts Group.
Anyway, Cal's great. Thank you so much for being here, Vicky, and for unmuting. We love to hear your voice. And Stephanie is a higher ed ESL teacher. She's a middle school child and I'm interested in this topic from a parenting perspective. Wonderful. We have a parenting workshop that we do that we would love to bring to Louisville, Kentucky. If you're interested in that, please let us know. And then Justin is an instructional designer at Pueblo Community College in Colorado. Justin, if you could also kind of add what brought you to this session today, what attracted you to it, that would be great. Thank you. And Sarum, it would be great to hear from you as well about what your position is and what brought you here today. So the overview of what we are going to do, we just welcomed you. Welcome. We're going to talk about our terms and set some goals, review the research quickly, and then we're going to show you what we do with K through 12 students, with the higher ed stuff really, I think, also applying to the higher grade levels, also applying to higher ed. And we're going to show you basically our approach to integrating social and emotional learning into digital citizenship. We essentially believe the statement that is in the title of this program, which is that if you combine social emotional learning and technology, that gets you digital citizenship, especially when we think of the newest form of digital citizenship, which we will talk about here in a little bit. We're going to have you guys work a little bit and do like a bit of a workshop-y thing. And then we will reflect on it and hopefully come out better people at the end of our little hour here. Teacher Courtney, could you take the next few slides?
Yeah, of course. So we'll just start with some words here to get us loose this morning. What if, instead of avoiding social media in school altogether, or focusing solely on the negative aspects of social media and internet use, we teach students how to leverage it to connect in positive ways and build a digital footprint that reflects their best selves.
Susan, what a great quote. Thank you. I love this because it's really focusing us towards leveraging technology towards positive change. It's not just about staying safe on the internet, it's about building community and sharing our ideas with the world. Yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, so we all live in two worlds right now. Some of us are digital tourists, meaning that we use technology occasionally, but we might not be totally comfortable with it. Some of us are digital resident aliens. Some of us are digital natives. But what's important here to understand is that our students are all digital natives. Yeah, Seth, go ahead on this one, because I think it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we know this, right? Like these kids grew up with screens in front of their faces, especially the younger kids, right? Footprints in silicon. Love that. Love that, Vicky. Our students, especially our younger students who've been impacted by the pandemic during their formative years. I mean, screen time, digital citizenship, it is citizenship, right? Like there, as we'll talk about in a little bit, there's not much of a difference for them between the digital and IRL worlds. I want to hear from you guys a little bit right now. How do you feel about your relationship to technology, right? So we are combining SEL and tech. So I want to know how you guys feel about your personal, so we're not talking about our students here, your personal relationship with technology. So when you think about interacting with screens, right? Whether it be when you grab your alarm on your phone, when you wake up in the morning and then you check the New York Times like I do every day, or when you are like trying to put down Reddit at the end of the night so that you can go to sleep, giving you guys a little too much of a glimpse into my personal media usage right now, or interacting with screens maybe in your household, with your family, with your kids. How do you feel about your personal relationship to technology? You can either unmute or answer in the chat.
And we promise no judgment. Karen says she's on it too much.
Ooh, reinventing.
I'll jump in here for a second. I feel like I can kind of talk about my husband and I. We use it more for like to get information from, news sources, reliable news sources. If we do YouTube, it's like, how to learn how to do something, where I feel like the younger generation, like my children and even my college students, use it a lot more for social connections. And I always still find it fascinating that they get their news from sources that I wouldn't think would be a good source.
Like their friend?
Well, yeah, like social media or it's interesting.
Yeah. So two follow-up questions there. One is how do you know something is a reliable source?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, every source has a, slants more one way or another. So I try to go to like multiple news sources to analyze the information as to what I'm going to believe. But yes, you're right. On the ground, what is it? Citizens as journalists, is kind of a new thing. And so that didn't exist, a long time ago. And some of it's really good, but it's just that difference between like what my son who's in middle school is experiencing and how he uses it and how we use it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of reliability is an open question. Like you said, you're right, and I think what you meant is like I'm right to ask the question, right? Because there's not necessarily like correct answers these days about what is reliable information. You're going to get a lot of different stories about, for example, mainstream news outlets about whether or not they're reliable, right? So it's fresh new times there, and I think that the most important thing is for each person to have an idea of why they seek out the sources that they do, and that's the starting point, right? My second follow-up question, Stephanie, though, was you said that your kids use it for social purposes, but I'm wondering, how do you use technology for social purposes, or do you?
Yeah, I don't like Facebook at all. I don't really, the only way I use it socially is actually through, I teach a class online. And so that, kind of getting to know my students who aren't local with me, because I teach an in-person class and an online class in another state. So that's, really how I use it, I guess, more socially, is that I get to know my students, through teaching online. But personally, I don't use it because it doesn't make me feel good.
So I think you're talking about social media, right? But I'm wondering, like, do you Zoom with family and things like that? Do you seek out your friends and relatives in different places via video conferencing? Are there other ways that you use tech to be social?
Yeah, actually my parents want me to Zoom more, and it's just something or FaceTime more, and it's something I just don't really do. Like I have to make myself do it. I'd rather call them. And my husband too. So that's just, no, maybe that's us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I keep drilling in here, but why phone call and not video?
Because I think it's like harder I don't see my parents that often, so it's harder to see them. I don't know. It's easier for me just to pick up a phone call, or I don't know. I guess it's just personal preference.
Yeah, so I would, as a little bit of homework, I would maybe try to focus on like what that feeling is, right? Like what is the feeling that you get when you're on FaceTime versus when you're on the phone, and try to do some exploration of like how the technology is making you feel. Because there's probably something deeper there. My parents, for example, my mom loves FaceTime, loves to see the kids. My stepmom hates being on FaceTime. When I drill down with her on it, she hates seeing herself on camera. And she would much rather just not care about how she looked on any given day. So there is a whole bunch of stuff to unpack there in terms of like how she's feeling about her appearance and all that kind of stuff. And for any given person, it could be any number of reasons why they might want to engage with that technology or not. And this is one of the things that we're talking about here, especially when you guys work with higher ed students, is like just asking that why. People have certain behaviors that they do, things that they like to do, things that they don't like to do. And oftentimes they don't go beyond just knowing that they like or don't like it, or that they avoid it or seek it. And just taking the time to ask yourself, okay, well, what's the feeling here? Right? Like, how am I feeling when this is happening? Like that can be the door to exploring some deeper relationship with the technology. Vicki, I love what you said here about interacting with your parents, your 90-year-old parents using Alexa. I didn't even know that you could do that. So are you being like, Alexa, tell my mom
that's something I wanted to provide a little bit of counterpoint for a very different experience than what Stephanie is having. I have an Alexa show, and I have them set up in my parents' house. They have chosen to stay in their own home. And to be able to video chat with them multiple times a day and actually see how they're doing in dealing with their medical issues, and the people that are helping take care of them has been invaluable for me. Because it's one of those things, sometimes when you're just talking over the phone, people can mask a lot of information. And if you're actually seeing their facial expressions, how they're able to move, that sort of thing, I would have lost my mind over the past couple of years without the Alexa show, to be honest. And it's something I realized that I threw our privacy out the window, but it's been a way that I've been able to be present with my parents on a daily basis.
What do you mean you threw your privacy out the window?
Well, with Alexa, I think anytime you have online video, and even though that there are rules for how they're using the video and learning things from it, that there's not that guarantee of privacy. Because it's possible for information to escape anytime you have any sort of online conversation like that. So it's, yes, we're having conversations that normally you would not have over an avenue that's not secure, but to be able to have that real communication and be able to see them it's worth sacrificing, or it's worth some of the risk.
Yeah, it's interesting. There is this risk reward dynamic that goes with any bit of digital participation, where there is benefit to connecting with the world, and there is also risk to putting yourself out there. What you're talking about is like this extra level of risk of like, do I even trust that this company, or in this case, this conference, which is recording our conversation right now, is going to be using this data in the way that they say that they're going to, right? With a big company like Amazon, you'd like to think that they're shored up on their protection against digital piracy or hacking or whatever it is. And maybe we're right, maybe we're not, maybe we'll never know, right? And there is a bit of a leap of faith, but also some things that we can do to shore up our protections of ourselves, right? So like in this case where you are, you've got a private connection with someone, but you're worried that maybe there might be information that's out there. Like I'm not on this recording talking about, like, sharing my birthday or my home address, right? Like these are pieces of information that someone might be able to use to gain some sort of digital power over me. Things like that are ways that you can mitigate the risk while also seeking out the reward of participating in the digital world, of which I believe there are many of these rewards. Justin, I wanted to move on to you. I love this line. Technology in general I use as an extension of myself. Are you able to unmute and elaborate there, or maybe add in the chat?
Sure. Well, in general, that is what technology is a way to expand our reach, whether it's the technology is as simple as writing, or as advanced as sitting in here with y'all in different states having conversations. We really are in a global village now. They started talking about it a long time ago, but we're really in a global village now, and our reach has been extended across the world. And I try to use technology I'm not trying to say that that's the only way I use technology. I mean, I write music, so I use technology to do that. I'm an instructional designer, so I'm constantly using technology to assist my job. But just in general, I think, have you ever read the Cyborg Manifesto?
Oh no.
I read it in grad school. It's it basically says that we're all cyborgs already, because we are using technology so much that we are, you know, connected to it in ways that are almost unbreakable now. So I just see technology as an extension of myself.
Yeah, an extension of yourself, and also a way to extend yourself, right?
Yes.
Like into the digital world. Yeah, I mean, remember phone numbers? Remember when we used to remember phone numbers?
Not real. I don't really remember any phone numbers except my partner and my mom's, you know?
Yeah. I remember my partners, my mom. No, I don't even know my mom's. I remember my partners and my girlfriend from high school. I remember her home phone number. So if I want to call her parents, I can do that. But otherwise, I have no phone numbers in my head anymore. And I used to know everyone's. Crazy. That's just one example, right? Awesome. Thank you so much to everybody for sharing. Really do appreciate the the vulnerability. Obviously, when we're talking about our feelings and technology, that is a key component here. And as you're teaching, that's also a huge tool in your pocket, right? To be vulnerable yourself when you are teaching your kids, to show them that you have done some deep thinking about your relationship with technology as a way to, as a vehicle for them to follow suit. So digital citizenship, Courtney, you want to take these?
Sure. So just some basic definitions here so we're all on the same page. Digital citizenship is the responsible, ethical, and safe use of technology and the internet, involving understanding how to navigate digital spaces, interact with others online in a respectful and positive manner, protecting personal information and privacy. And we've kind of already touched on a lot of this just in these opening conversations, but also using technology to create and share content in a legal and ethical way. We're talking about tech is the use of digital tools. So the difference between the two is digital tools, systems, and devices to create, store, process, and communicate information. And then SEL, social emotional learning, the process of developing the skills, attitude, and knowledge necessary to manage emotions, build healthy relationships, and make responsible decisions. And we can call this whatever you're comfortable with. We can call this wellness. We can call this total child or whole child, whatever feels good to you, but really honing in on that building healthy relationships and managing emotions.
Yeah, as Courtney and I traveled from Oregon to states like Utah and Ohio that are different colors on the map, we've noticed that there are different words to talk about this. Everybody thinks it's important. Everybody wants to be addressing it in their classrooms. Sometimes you have to navigate the political system in order to be able to do so. And it can be as simple as referring to it by a different word. Goals for today's programs. So we're going to be talking about two frameworks. One of them is ISTE's Digital Citizenship Framework, and one of them is CASEL's SEL Framework. These are kind of the two big frameworks that we work with. There are others. We want you to be able to identify some successful lesson elements that combine tech and SEL. And then we're going to discuss some ways to introduce vulnerability into conversations with students about technology. So some research here. Basically, kids use tech. I mean, like a lot of it, and a lot of the time. It is very much a part of their world. During COVID-19, lo and behold, students used more tech. It was something that you saw happen pretty much across the board. Courtney, if you could go down a couple slides. These are some pretty eye-popping numbers about the daily use of teenagers and technology. You notice that number under YouTube. 95% of teenagers in America use YouTube daily. This is a video-first generation, right? They would rather learn something from a YouTube tutorial than from anything that you would present to them in writing. And that proves out looking at this number here. 67% use TikTok daily. I don't know, are you guys on TikTok? Is anybody else on TikTok? I was on TikTok for like, I don't know, 6 months. Its algorithm is far too effective. And I was spending too much time on there because it was just serving me up just really, really wonderful 15-second nuggets of entertainment. And I get it. I get why things are on it. It's really, really entertaining stuff. There's some really creative people on there doing some really creative stuff. 67% teens are on there daily, about the same for Instagram, Snapchat 59. And then you go down into some of these old people technologies like Facebook and Twitter and Twitch. My favorite, Reddit, is down at 14. Come on, teens, get on Reddit. It's the front page of the internet. But yeah, this is just here to give you an idea of exactly how much our students are using technology. And the New York Times once did this like little exploration of this generation, Generation Z. And they wanted to like name it something else, right? Because Generation Y got renamed the Millennial Generation. And they had all of these different suggestions for what they wanted to name them. But one of them in particular stuck out to me. And they called it the Spime Generation. Does anybody know what a spime is? I had never heard this before. But a spime is like from the Internet of Things. It is a futuristic object characteristic of the Internet of Things that can be tracked through time and space throughout its lifetime. They are essentially virtual master objects that can at various times have physical incarnations of themselves. This kind of blew my mind a bit, right? This idea that these are digital beings that have physical incarnations. Basically, what this is telling us about Gen Z is it's digital life first and IRL second for a lot of them. Right? So digital citizenship is incredibly important. It is just citizenship. Now, when we talk about SEL, I think no surprise to anybody who showed up to this particular session, SEL is good for kids. Talking about your feelings, lo and behold, can help you do stuff. When we talk about SEL, we talk about some very basic things. Being able to identify your feelings, identify the feelings of other people, and then by practicing those two skills, which even for adults, I think is more difficult and complicated than me just saying these things out loud as things we're supposed to do. These things take practice. But if you're able to identify your feelings and the feelings of others, then you're able to make good choices. And the good choices are win-win choices, things that are good for me and things that are good for other people at the same time. And if you're able to make good choices, then you can develop optimism. And if you're developing optimism, then you can believe in the positive change that you can create in the world. So just this work of SEL, we see as a vehicle to creating positive change. And in the digital world, you can really do that en masse, right? It can be, you can have an outsized impact in this world. And so if you approach it with a strong foundation of social and emotional learning, the sky's the limit. So what is this telling us, Courtney?
Yes, this is telling us that tech is everywhere, as we all know, as it's an integral part of who we are. And I have to echo Justin's comment of technology in general is an extension of myself. I'm sure that most of us to some capacity can agree with that. We also have feelings about tech are complicated. We've all touched on that as well. And the pandemic made things even more complicated, and especially for kids.
Absolutely. My daughter was in first grade when the pandemic hit. And yeah, that was actually where our social and emotional learning program came from. My daughter was in first grade. Nobody else knew what Zoom was in March of 2020, but we've been in the video conferencing game for 15 years. And so I just started doing social calls between my daughter and her friends, and that evolved into social calls for her class, which evolved into ones for her school, which evolved into our social and emotional learning program. It turns out that a lot of the work that we were already doing with our students in Asia was very consistent with a lot of the pillars of social emotional learning. And so the pandemic for us was a story of discovering personal identity of our group of teachers. We found this work, and lo and behold, it was extremely dear to our hearts and stuff that was very meaningful for us. So that's an aside. I'd like to get another share from you guys. We asked you how you feel about your relationship with technology, but what do you know about your students? Most of the people here are in higher ed, so I think that's still Gen Z. How do you think your students feel about their relationship with technology? Let's answer either by unmuting or doing it in the chat.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
I'll
Karen.
show my face. Sorry I was late to the party. For some reason, it just took it a minute to connect, and
It's
I
still
went
a
to do
party.
something else really quick. So anyway, yeah, I'm higher ed as well. I did not answer that. And I work in education and outreach for our Center for Instructional Technology. So I'm here just to kind of get this overview that maybe bits and pieces of this I can help pass on to our faculty at the University of Alabama. That's where I am. So I also have a first grader, believe it or not. And so technology is something we're definitely dealing with, the social, emotional pieces of that, when it's appropriate, when it's not, how to deal with things. So I'm looking at it as a parent viewpoint, but I also adjunct teach occasionally, not a lot, our educators program. I teach the computers and applied technology course for them. And they usually don't want to be on camera, which always surprises me because these are young educators, typically the grad students. But then sometimes we get people my age and older that have gone back to school. And those are the ones, I'm finding the age kind of makes a difference whenever it comes to the classroom piece and engaging. If they are, seems like in their 20s and 30s, they would prefer not to be on camera. And if they are a little bit older, they're more anxious to get in and socialize and to connect and to see the faces and stuff and make more of that full connection. I think it's more lived experiences that are more easily shared when you're talking face to face virtually, right? So I don't know because, again, I worked with graduate students, and that I shouldn't stereotype, but that's kind of atypical of what I found with most of them in those ages. Now I have them do asynchronous presentations. So they can do reflections asynchronously. We use Flip for that often. They can use whatever platform, but Flip is one they've kind of enjoyed using. And they're great on the camera. And for those that never turn their camera on, it's so nice when they finally do. And I'm like, that's what you look like. And it makes that connection for me. It greatly helps. And I think it helps me as an instructor to do a video, just to go and have something out there so they can see me, I can talk, they can see my facial expressions. I think it's just really, really important. But undergrads, I really can't speak to that very much.
I think that's really interesting. It's such a complicated, and Justin, I'll get to you in just a second here. Thank you for turning on your camera. I think it's such a complicated thing, the camera turning on, right? Like part of me with younger students, oh gosh, I guess I'm shaming people into turning on their that's not my intention. But I think there is, like, especially with younger students, preparing them for this world where, like, even as people are going back to the office, there's still, like, it's like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing, and then Monday, Friday they're working remote, right? This is like being able to engage in an online meeting with your camera on in a professional setting with your camera at eye level. These are skills that I believe that they're going to need in the modern workplace, right? But as you say, a lot of teenagers, especially, they prefer to have their cameras off. And then there are these, like, sort of kind of equity issues around, like, requiring to have your camera on, right? Like some students, especially if they're learning from home, some students don't have a home that they necessarily want to put on blast in front of the entire class. So it's like balancing those issues with like issues of like, well, how do we make sure that we are preparing our students for this coming world, right? And I think that that diving into the feelings behind it can be the vehicle to like begin to unravel, like, okay, well, if this is the feeling that you have, how can we adjust this situation in order to avoid that feeling, or in order to work through that feeling, to make it so that you can develop the skill that you need to develop. But Justin, what did you want to add?
I was just thinking about at the beginning of the pandemic, and it came to mind because of the mention of students turning the cameras on or not turning their cameras on, and how I would have expected that more students would have been like interested in turning their camera on, but it was like teaching to a black hole, you know, because I was teaching during that time. I've been doing instructional design for about a year, but it was almost impossible to teach. And I felt like I went to another session, and in their studies, they found that the locus of control in most students these days is external. And so they feel like the world is kind of doing these things to them and they're afraid. And so I think there's some fear there, but there's also some like a sense of empowerment. Like I get to choose what I put out there and what I don't. Is kind of what I feel from a lot of my students. And I don't know, I'm blown away. My daughter was at my house the other day, and you know, she's grown, she's 24, but she was like flipping around in her phone, and she has the same phone I do, but hers was doing things that mine doesn't. Like, and I have no explanation for it other than, you know, she is more connected to that device than I'll ever be. So I think that there's like a feeling of connection and a feeling of power that maybe is a new thing for students.
Yeah, that's interesting. The external locus of control, the idea of like power and control, and like, you know, how you choose to like put stuff out there. There's this app, God, I forget what it's called, but like, where the idea is to like take a picture from a random place every day, and it's the back of your camera instead of the front of your camera. Does anybody know what this is called? It's like a thing with teenagers right now. And the idea was to get this like authentic slice of life, right? So that you didn't have to feel like you were, you know, preparing, like doing some Kardashian post of like, you know, perfection. And instead it was just this like normal thing. Of course, it's involved into like that Kardashian shot of perfection. But yeah, it's these issues of like control, I think, are really, really interesting. And again, diving to the feelings behind it. Okay, well, you know, how do you feel when you have control? How do you feel when you don't have control? Right? Like diving into those things, I think, can make it so that it's not about the control, it's about the feeling, and that feelings you can work with, right? Judith, am I saying your name correctly?
You do. I think the big challenge for us will be from the educator side, and I'm coming at it from the perspective of graduate education. The big challenge is to really teach the students how to use technology the right way. So don't waste your time where there is an app to do it. And the development of app is so fast that it's very hard to keep track of it, right? Like, so if you code, don't waste your time. You're using, say, LaTeX to code, you know, to reflect your mathematical formulas. Don't waste your time. There is an app that will do it for you, right? To check code for errors. At the same time, create the space when you need to put your effort into thinking about and strategically building the algorithm. That is still about thinking. And I think we're not placing enough emphasis that use it to save your time, use it to offload whatever can be offloaded from your shoulder. Don't waste your time anymore. You know, there's a lot of literature on don't waste your time on building PowerPoints anymore. And here we are, you know, I did my own, right? Yesterday, I was presenting on this conference. So offload what you can and create the space to think really algorithmically and big picture. And that's the piece that is still lacking, even in graduate education. And it really alarms me that because we are locking everything into a context, we're not teaching our students how to break apart from that context. They stay within the context of that app, and they don't break apart when they need to break apart. And so when it comes back, and it's, you know, like I'm just still thinking about some of these concepts, but a couple of days ago, one of our leader I'm at Regis University and I'm chairing the data science department, right? So that's the perspective. One of our leaders from the university said that JP Morgan was looking for, you know, new graduates coming in and kind of folding in. So internships, and then once the students are vetted, then offering career opportunities. And they actually want sort of the creative side of the university to come in, sort of the liberal arts to come in, because they see that as a more missing skill, more even than, say, my skill level, right? Which is, you know, students graduating from my program. So, you know, obviously I'm exaggerating to make it a point of that's the piece to me where we need to spend time to teach the students when to create space to think outside the box. And there is an emerging market that puts a very high price on students who are able to think outside the mark and able to be really, really nimble of offloading. And so that to me is a real skill as well, because the pressure is on to always stay on top, right? Like I can only offload if I'm aware of that app. And now, you know, that will save a lot of my time.
And I can imagine how you feel about ChatGPT.
I feel really, really good about ChatGPT personally, as well as an educator. Really, really good. To me, that's the same thing. Let's offload what can be offloaded, and teach the students to offload. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, exactly. And my personal theory on that is that as ChatGPT and as AI gets better and better at doing these things that are good at what the human brain can do, that work like this, SEL, robots are never going to be able to do that, right? But it's an incredibly important human skill to be able to navigate the world socially. And to be able to navigate your own personal emotions. So in my opinion, school is going to evolve more and more towards work of the heart, work of the body, work of the spirit, and then basically like how to use the machines, right? Like I think that's what education is going to be about.
Go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have like 5 more minutes now. So I want to get quickly through our thing, which this has been an incredible conversation, and I wish we had more time to just like dive into this more and more. But essentially, you know, the new digital citizenship is not just about staying safe online. It is about creating positive change, right? Being a digital agent, being a digital interactor, and navigating your digital self. Courtney, if you could go down to slide 26 real quick. So when we are talking about using like applying SEL with technology, we're looking at the standards of being a digital citizen and the standards of social emotional learning. So you've got like self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness, with the ideas of being a digital citizen. I'm inclusive, I'm informed, I'm engaged, I'm balanced, I'm alert. If you think about something like a digital footprint, right? Where you are like putting your stuff out there and you have to be responsible about the decisions that you're making and what you're going to put out there, not only for how it reflects on you, but how it reflects on other people, right? You see the digital citizenship skills of being inclusive and informed. You see the social emotional skills of responsible decision-making and self-management. Just in that little thing, that little example of a digital citizenship skill, you have multiple standards from both of these areas, from technology and from social and emotional learning. So the things that we do when we're working with students in order to get them to have these conversations where they're applying emotions to the context of technology. Courtney, if we can go to the next slide. We have discussions, role play, games, read aloud, learning centers, simulations, guest speakers, field trips. We do all of these things, but I want to focus in on the discussions. Our approach is to use realistic scenarios to inspire SEL-based conversations about digital life. Right, so we're using the scenario as a way to kind of make it less personal and give that opportunity for vulnerability. But then it is a realistic scenario, and so we are using that scenario to like have actual real conversations that have applicability in life. We had an example here, if you want to look in our slides, about how we do this with young students. We've got videos that we use. We don't have time to look at that today. I wanted to, since you guys work with older students, I wanted to show you guys the images starting on slide 35 there, Courtney. So this is what we do with older students. We use these like images, right? So we just look and try to get people to respond about the feelings that they feel when they see an image like this. Or like this. You know, I think about, who was it, Vicky? I think about Vicky reaching out to her parents when I see this slide. This one really gets me. There is something good happening, but it's performative. Tricky.
We find so much success in just the silence of putting an image up there and then hearing what the kids have to say, because it speaks to everyone so differently, but just really powerful images.
And that's like a skill, right? How do you present yourself online?
Yep.
I really love this one. In our slideshow, we have more examples with QR codes. I put the slideshow in the Discord, and I can actually put it here in the chat as well. So yeah, there's a lot more stuff here. Typically in a workshop format, if we had more time, we would talk about you know, how we apply the SEL skills. But if you're just looking at like, you know, self-awareness with the Facebook guy, with the smelly guy, and then on Facebook, right? Like he was practicing an SEL skill of self-awareness, of like figuring out how to present himself on a line in a way that would be more conducive to what his goals were, right? And it's, once you have the framework, it's not too much of a stretch to apply these skills to this world, right? You just need the framework and you just start making connections. So let's see. One of the things that, if you go down to slide 48, I guess we can kind of end with this. These conversations are less meaningful without relevance and authenticity. So it's got to be something that is relevant to the students, and it has to be authentic, or else it's meaningless. We talked a little bit about our personal relationships with technology today, and I think that like thinking about those things and expressing them with our students is incredibly critical, and for parents as well, to talk about your relationship to technology. Like I said, I love Reddit. Sometimes I love it a little too much, right? And I tell my daughter that like sometimes it's hard for me to put down my phone because it's just so entertaining, right? And having that like emotional vulnerability with her, I think helps her to identify it when it's happening to her too. So our approach is to use the rich media content to disarm and to relate. We practice vulnerability and create opportunities for us to listen to the students. And we get our students to be authentic when discussing technology, which is something that we would have asked you guys, but I think we're out of time. One more slide on 52. I want to share with you guys my podcast. I have a podcast. It's called Make It Mindful. It's about bringing mindfulness practices to education. So if you would like to check that out, please do. And otherwise, do we have time to ask for people's like closing thoughts and impressions of the thing, Jalinda? Are we good to go over a little bit?
I'm sorry, I have another meeting session I have to jump to that starts at 10.
Okay, I'm gonna put my email in here. If anybody would like to continue the conversation, please do. I'm also on the Discord, so please check us out there. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate that.
Thank you.